بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear sisters, my dear daughters. Welcome back to a new episode in the biography of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. A new episode and a new station in the journey of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Last lesson, we lived with the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, the VIP journey of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj. And we mentioned how was this blessed night, and actually it was a part of the night, a miracle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it happen to his prophet. He went to the Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa and he prayed with all the prophets before him as a leader for them, Imam in the Salah. And we mentioned that it was a symbol that the Prophet Muhammad والسلام, is the final messenger and the last messenger, and he's the leader of all the other prophets. And then we spoke about his ascent to the heavens and different numbers and layers of the heavens, the seven heavens, and how he was passing with every heaven and being saluted by and greeted by the prophets that present in every heaven, and how he was in a point, was so near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when the prayer was ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we mentioned that every time we are praying, we have to remember that. We have to remember that the prayer is the only pillar of the Islam who has been ordained in the a very close place to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today, inshallah, we're going to, we mentioned that the new events and the happy news are coming after this journey, and we will go through this happy news today, and we know what is this happy news. The hope reaches from the Madinese, and we mentioned before that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he used to offer and invite people during the Hajj or the season of the pilgrimage, that the people who come to do the pilgrimage in the Mecca, he is supposed to he invite them to Islam, and many of the tribes were not offering to support the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. But fortunately, the Prophet and his companion met 6 men from Yathrib, and Yathrib was the previous name of Medina. Yathrib, first 4 from Khazraj, and last 2 was from Aus tribes. And as we know that Al-Madina, before the Prophet came to it, it was called Yathrib. And it contains 2 main tribes. It was 2 main tribes were living in Al-Madina, Aus and Al-Khazraj. They were all the time fighting each other. And also there was Jews in the Medina, and they helped these wars and battles to be increased between the 2 tribes, as they used to work in the weapon trading, and they used to be very happy when the 2 tribes always in war and always in a battle together. So these men, they are 6 men, as we mentioned, 4 from 1 tribe, the Khazraj, and 2 from the Aus, and they reported their name was Asad ibn Zurara, عوف ibn Harith, Rafi ibn Malik, Qutbah ibn Amir, and Uqba ibn Amir, and Jabir ibn Abdullah. All of them embraced Islam due to what they heard from the Jews. And this is what we mentioned, that the Jews supposed to live with them in Yathrib or Al-Madina. So they told them, the Jews, that this is the time for a prophet that will appear. And when this prophet appear, we will follow him and we will fight you. We will support him and fight you like any. We will defend him much, and we will fight you. So at that time, in the Jews, in their holy book, it was written that the Prophet ﷺ, with his description in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم, which means they know the Prophet characteristic and how he looks like more than their own sons. Or that's give us how much they were very confirmed about the appearance of the final prophet. And that's why they told the people of the Medina or the Yathrib at that time that when this prophet appear, we will follow him and support him and will fight you if you're going to be against him. But of course, what happened when they discovered that the prophet was not from them, from the Jews, but was from the Arab? That's why they became very jealous and they hid all these prophecy about the appearance of the final prophet and start to fight the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam from the first early minute when he arrived to Medina. And this is what we're going to have inshallah later. So those people, the 6 people, embraced Islam, and they know from the Jews that it's a time for the final prophet, and they were very happy to know that Prophet Muhammad from the Arab, and he's inviting them to Islam, and they be sure about him because they have this note before from the Jews. So immediately they entered the Islam, and they wished that by their invitation to Islam to their tribes, Khazraj and Aus, may they cement their tie together, and these battles and wars between the 2 tribes to be stopped. The new converts embraced and preached, and there was almost no house in Yathrib or in Medina that was not excited by the news of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Now, after those people went to Medina, start the news about the Prophet to be announced there. So in the 12 years of the prophethood came to the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, the 7 people from Yathrib again. 7 people from Yathrib to a new one, not like the before, a new one, their names here, to pledge to make what we call the first Aqaba pledge, or Bay'at al-Aqaba al-Ula. The first Aqaba pledge is like an agreement or a treaty being written between the Prophet ﷺ and those 7 men came from Yathrib, and we can see here they are also from the Aus and Khazraj. It's not only from one tribe. Around 5 of them from Khazraj and 2 from Aus, and they made this treaty with the Prophet ﷺ with its it was a set of 5 points in this treaty. Number 1, to listen and obey to the Prophet in all sets of circumstances. Number 2, to spend in plenty as well in scarcity. Number 3, to enjoin good and forbid evil. Number 4, in Allah's service, you will fear the censure of none. And number 5, to defend me, to defend the Prophet in case I seek your help, and debar me from anything you debar yourself. Defend the Prophet and prevent him any harm, prevent any harm coming to him, like what they are preventing from themselves or from your spouses and children from. And if you observe those precepts, paradise is in store for you. Here is very important, actually, this pledge. We can see that this treaty was very clear that the Prophet will go to the Medina or Yathrib, and he will live with them. And before he go with them, he had to make everything is clear by doing this pledge. this pledge, the points mentioned in this pledge is very important, especially the last one, that the Prophet ﷺ is telling them, you will defend me and you will prevent any harm to me, as you are preventing the harm to yourself or to your spouse or to your children. And you will do that. And of course, if you can remember before, when we mentioned one of the tribes, that when it came to this point, they told the Prophet, we're going to defend you and we're going to expose ourselves to the hatredness and the opposition of many Arab tribes. For what price? We need to have the leadership after you. So the Prophet, he mentioned the leadership after me is according to Allah, the one who been chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not something I can guarantee for you. But here, the people of the Medina, they accepted the price. The price was the paradise. The paradise is in store for you. If you're going to defend me and to expose yourself to the hatredness and the opposition of the major Arab tribes at that time in the Arab Peninsula, so the reward will be the paradise. And this is very important because I'm going to remind you about that, inshallah, later in in many next lesson, inshallah, coming. So this was the main 5 points that been mentioned in this treaty. And next year, the 13 years, which is the last year that the Prophet will remain in Mecca, because actually those people, the 7 men, they went and returned next year in the Hajj season, 70, another 70 men and 2 women who have attended this pledge. So you can see here how much the people of the Medina are very good people. They started by 6 and the 6 brought 7 and then the 7 brought 70 men and 2 women. And here the 2 women is having the symbol of that, the importance of the presence of a woman. It's not only the pledge to the men, but also the pledge was including 2 women, which means that how Islam is appreciating women and taking her consideration in even the treaty or in this agreement. So after this second Aqaba pledge, this was the beginning that the Prophet ﷺ started the Islam to be announced and to be spread in the Medina, and the Prophet sent Mus'ab ibn Umair. Mus'ab ibn Umair, one of the companion that the Prophet sent him as an ambassador of Islam to teach the people the Islam. In other words, Mus'ab was going to Medina in order to make the people there to be sure that the condition is peaceful there, and there is a lot of people in Islam, and the condition and the road is paved for the reception of the Prophet ﷺ. So he sent Mus'ab in order to teach the people and to make them learn about Islam. And actually, before al-Hijrah, or the migration of the Prophet to Medina, most of the people in Medina was already entered in Islam, and they were, most of them entered from both tribes, as we mentioned, the Aus and al-Khazraj, and the Jews is still there. Of course, here the Jews will not be happy by the migration, but they couldn't reveal that. They concealed that in their hearts, as we're going to see inshallah later. So the second Aqaba pledge, as we mentioned, in 13 years of prophethood, and it was where there were 70 men and 2 women in this pledge. On the social, regarding the social life of the Prophet ﷺ, we'd like to mention that during the 10th year of the prophethood, after when Lady Khadija passed away. And of course, we know that Lady Khadija, she had children from the Prophet ﷺ, 4 girls and 2 boys. And we mentioned that the boys died in an early age, Abdullah and Al-Qasim. And then the 4 girls was Kulthum, wa Ruqayya, wa Zainab, wa Fatima al-Zahra. So the Prophet at that time, one of the friends of Lady Khadija, she told him that you have to have a wife to take care of the children, to take care um, uh, of your own things. And just because she found him very sad after what happened to the Lady Khadija and passed away. So he married Lady Sauda bint Zum'a radiallahu anha. She was widow. Her husband passed away after the returning from Al-Habasha migration, the first Habasha migration. They went and then returned back. You remember when we mentioned about the Ethiopian migration, the first migration for the Muslim, when they actually was exposed to the tortures, to the torture of the Quraysh. So they had to go to Habasha at the first migration. So she went with her husband at that time, and then she returned back after the first migration, and her husband being sick and passed away. So the Prophet ﷺ married Lady Sauda bint Zum'a, and she was the first wife for him after Lady Khadija radiallahu anha, and stayed with her 3 years before marrying Lady Aisha radiallahu anha. The Lady Sauda was very kind and generous, giving lots of sadaqat. And subhanallah, this is when we go to the Sirah more, you will find it could be just a common character for all the Prophet wives. All the Prophet wives, or the mothers of the believers, Ummahatul Mu'mineen, they were very generous and having lots of sadaqat all the time doing that. She passed away in 54, in year 54 after Hijrah. You know, of course, that the Hijri calendar started immediately after the migration of the Prophet to Medina, or after the Hijrah. So the calendar started from the day of the Hijrah. So she passed away in year 54 after Hijrah. Regarding Lady Aisha, we mentioned that the Prophet already married Lady Sauda in 10th year of prophethood. Now, in the 13th year of the prophethood, the Prophet was married to Lady Aisha radiallahu anha, and his actual marriage celebration with her was in Medina, 2 years after Hijrah. So he just married to her, but they didn't have the relation together except after his migration to Medina, 2 years after his migration to Medina. And at that time, her age was 9. And I would like to stop here just for 2 minutes regarding this issue, because actually some of the people that attacking Islam are taking this point as a weak point and mentioning how the Prophet can marry a child. She's still child, she's just 9 years. How it could be like that? So, how to answer those people who are telling you that? First of all, we have this Sirah, the biography now, what we are speaking about, is being mentioned to us with Sahih al-Isnad, or a correct sequence of narration, that this event is true and happened. And you know that the hadith, many of the hadith of the Prophet is having is a story, is his life in many of the hadith he mentioned. So it's really, she was 9 years when she married the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. But actually it was not something awful or something يعني strange at that time. It was the tradition and culture of the people in Arabs to have that marriage usually at that time for the girls. And it's not the first time. That is not the first event that happened for a girl with this year, 9 or 10 years to be married. It happens later on in many of the European, even European history, that princes and maybe other types of females, they can marry at 12 and at 11 years old. So this was not something being awful to the Arab culture at that time. This is number one. Otherwise, we could find there is opposition. Maybe there was opposition from the disbelievers, because actually Prophet Muhammad at that time been under the observation of the Jews and disbelievers, and they have a lot of enemies. And if this something was awful or offensive, they will not stay quiet. They will start to make something bad and saying something bad about that. But they didn't. They didn't, because it gives us an idea that it was the culture and tradition at that time. Number two, from the medical point of view, that in the hot areas like the Arab Peninsula or the Saudi Arabia now or the Gulf area, the age of the puberty for the females or for the girls is much then lower than the girls grown up in the Western countries or in the cold weather. So in the hot weather, usually there is something called the metabolic rate is increasing. And by increasing this metabolic rate, metabolism and the hormones start to appear, and the signs of the puberty started earlier in the girls who grown up in the hot areas. So when she has 9 years, she's of course at that time, before marriage, she was reached puberty. She will not marry except when she reached puberty, and this has happened at this age. So it's not something astonishing. The third reason of marrying Lady Aisha, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wisdom. Allah wisdom that Lady Aisha to be much younger than the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, that she will live many years after the Prophet passed away, and she will give us all the hadith and how the Prophet was with her and how he been acting as a husband, because no one of us know what happened in her home and how the Prophet is treating her as a husband. And she was, as we're going to mention, she was very intelligent and she was very smart, and she started to teach even the Sahaba the fiqh and many hadith, and she lived, as we mentioned, many years after the Prophet, and she died at 58 years after Hijrah. So this is from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the all wise, that Lady Aisha to live many years after the Prophet, to narrate many hadith about that no one of the Sahaba, of the males, of the men, companions know, but she knows because she was living with him. She was living with him, and she knows many other, even more than other wives, because she was very close to him. So this is in short just the three main points that why at this age Lady Aisha married to the Prophet, and of course Allah knows best. Also, Lady Aisha was the daughter of his best friend. We know Abu Bakr, his best friend, and we mentioned that. And he was, moreover, being given by the Prophet the title of As-Siddiq, that he believed him when he came back from the Isra and the Mi'raj journey. So it was something very happy for him to make him marry his daughter. And also she was only virgins, the only virgin. The Prophet, all his wives, either they are widow, all of them were widow. The only virgin was Lady Aisha. And also she used to give lots of sadaqat. She was very smart, as we mentioned, intelligent, narrated more than 2,000 hadith about the Prophet. And she taught many of the companions the fiqh and the rules of Islam. And this is very important to know. The role of the woman in Islam is to teach others, even those if they are men. If she has the qualification and she has the ability to do that, she can do this. Lady, our mother, Lady Aisha, she did that. And as we mentioned, she lived many years after the Prophet, and she died at year 58 after Hijrah. Now we'll come back to Quraysh. We mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ, he decided to migrate to Al-Madinah after he sent Mus'ab ibn Umair as the first ambassador of Islam to pave the road for him. Now Quraysh felt something strange is happening by the people coming from Al-Madinah with two pledges in 2 successive years. The first pledge, Aqaba pledge, and the second Aqaba pledge. So they found themselves, they have no other option except to kill the Prophet. Killing and assassination of the Prophet for them was the only solution to what's happening, because they know that if he just fled from Mecca and they go to another place, he will be more strong and will be stronger, and he can attack them later. So they decided to kill him, and they decided to kill him they gathered from every tribe a man that they decided to kill him all. All those men will have one beat for him, as at that time that the tribe of the Prophet Banu Hashim and Banu Abd al-Muttalib, they cannot take the revenge for him because they cannot announce the war on all the Arab tribes. And this was the shaitan, of course, the shaitan idea. He came to them in a shape of a man and he told them to do that. So just before the migration to Medina, Jibril alayhi salam revealed to the Prophet about Quraysh's plot about killing him and was instructed not to sleep at home for this night. Therefore, the Prophet revealed the news to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and they agreed on migrating together at that night. Meanwhile, while the disbelievers were sneaking into the Prophet's house, he had planned with Ali ibn Abi Talib, his cousin, to sleep at his bed instead of him. Allah responded against the actions of the disbeliever by placing barriers and covered them. This is in Surah Yasin. They didn't see the Prophet. The Prophet left his house at dawn and they were all waiting outside, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala covered their eyes. They couldn't see the Prophet while he's passing between them. And moreover, he took dust from the ground and just scattered the dust on their heads. The Prophet and Al-Siddiq fled to the cave of Thawr. Cave of Thawr was a cave in a mountain called Cave of Thawr. They didn't go immediately to Al-Madinah. They go to this cave for 3 days. They stayed there for 3 days, in which Allah blinded the disbeliever by placing, and at the time the disbeliever was trying to trace them, and they actually reached this cave. But subhanallah, yani by Allah, as we mentioned yesterday, his name, the most able, the ever able, he prevent them from entering this cave as they saw a bird and spider cobweb. They mentioned how any person will go inside must cut this web, and these birds should be يعني fled away. So it must be a old cave that no one is there, although that both Abu Bakr and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was there. inside the cave, of Thawr, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, as we mentioned, the Prophet best friend, was worried about the Prophet and being assured by the Prophet at the same time. He was very worried about the Prophet, and he mentioned to him, I'm not fear about myself. If I died, I'm just one person, but I am يعني very fear about you, because you are an ummah, you are the nation. You are having the message to the nation. If you died, so the message will end. That's why he was very anxious, and he was very afraid about the Prophet. That's why it came in Surah At-Tawbah, ayah 40. If you don't aid the Prophet, Allah has already aided him. When those who disbelieved had driven him out of Mecca, out of means Mecca, as one of two, when they were in the cave. And he said to his companion, Rasul والسلام, mentioning to his companion Abu Bakr, do not grieve. Indeed, Allah is with us. And Allah sent down his tranquility upon him and supported him with angels you did not see, and made the word of those who disbelieve the lowest, while the word of Allah, that is the highest. And Allah is exalted in might and wise. This is give this ayah give us a sight about how the Prophet was sure of being the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now I would like to tell you about this plan of migration. When the Prophet ﷺ decided to migrate to Medina, he knows that Allah will support him and will defend him, and he will arrive Medina safely. But this didn't prevent him from taking all the means of protection and all the means that help this journey to be as safe as possible. And this is a great lesson for all of us, that we have to take the means. We don't say Allah will help us, Allah will protect us, and we are not having the means of this protection. So we have a great lesson here about Abu Bakr's family. Abu Bakr was not only a great person in that event as the best friend for the Prophet, but also his son, Abdullah ibn Abi Bakr, and his daughter. His son, Abdullah ibn Abi Bakr, he was supposed to be the CIA for them. He used to go to, during these 3 days, he's supposed to, every day, he just start to collect and to gather the news from Mecca, what they are planning, what they are having to do about the Prophet, and since they are now be sure that he's out of Mecca, what they will go, what is the next step. So the Prophet was gathering the news. He was not just sitting in the cave and said, yes, Allah will help us. Of course, Allah will help him. But at the same time, he was having his aides and gathering the news and start to make the plan and to do the steps, what to do, 1 and 2 or 3, or may we change this plan and go to other plan. His mind was acting all the time. So the son, Abdullah ibn Abi Bakr, was the CIA for them. And the daughter, his daughter, the eldest daughter of the Prophet, of the Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, her name was Asma, the eldest sister of Lady Khadija, of Lady Aisha. We mentioned that Lady Aisha was 9 years old, but her eldest sister, Asma bint Abi Bakr. Asma, she was pregnant, and her husband is a companion, great companion. His name is Zubayr. So at that time, Asma was pregnant with Abdullah. She will have a son. His name was Abdullah later on. And he was, by the way, he was the first newborn son in Medina. When she went to the Medina, she was the first one to deliver. So Asma, she was pregnant in 7 months, 7 months pregnant. And her role was to take the drinks and the food for the Prophet and her father, and to climb the mountain till she reached the cave of Thawr. You can imagine how much it is difficult for a pregnant female in her 7th month, that she carried and she has like a rope around her around her belly. She has like a robe with two containers, one container for the food and the other container for the drinks, and that's why it's been named as ذات النطاقين. ذات النطاقين, that she has two, by her robe, she has two containers for the drinks and the food for the Prophet. The servant of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq used to have his sheep. Abu Bakr has a herd of sheep. So he used to use the milk from these sheep and bring the milk for the Prophet and Abu Bakr. So the three members of Abu Bakr family was helping the Prophet. Everyone is knowing his role exactly, and they are doing their best. And of course, all of them were Muslims, and all of them was having the tawakkul, or how to depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and at the same time taking the means. This is a great lesson for all of us. Later on, Quraysh was extremely frustrated. 3 days. 3 days passed and nothing. The result is nothing. They can't find the two men. So they ordered a price of 100 camels. Camels at that time, just one camel was a wealth. If you have one camel, so you are a wealthy man at that time in the Arab Peninsula. So 100 camels, it's a great wealth. So it's a great price for anyone who could potentially capture the Prophet. One of them was this believer called Suraqa ibn Malik, desperately wanted rather valuable prize. He spotted the Prophet and as-Siddiq. He was very expert in the roads that going to Al-Madinah, so he took his horse and start riding with his extreme as fast as he can, and actually he reached as-Siddiq and the Prophet as well as their guide, and tried to run to them with his horse. He was very near to them, and when he saw them, he was sure at that time that he reached them. So with Allah power, the horse kneeled down about 3 times, portraying Suraqa's inability and revealing the prophethood of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, causing him to give up. Every time he tried to reach nearer, the horse started to kneel down. So he took the horse again and tried to reach near the Prophet. The horse kneeled down. So he felt that something wrong, that something is a great power is defending. Here what we are saying, here the defense of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is come, the support, the victory of Allah. When the Prophet took all the means he can with Abu Bakr, and they can't do more. They stayed in the cave 3 days. They took an unusual way to Medina. They did all the things that they can do as a means of a good planning for their journey. But at that point, when Suraqa was near to them, they can't do more. They can't do more, and he's approaching them really, and he come near to them. At that time, the most able and the all-powerful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prevent and entered with his protection to his prophet. And again, this is a lesson for all of us. After taking all the means that we can, at a time that we feel that we cannot do more, this is the latest thing we can do, then at that time the victory of Allah and the support of Allah will come to us. The Prophet, after that, before we go into this, Suraqa, of course, he was desperate to reach the Prophet and told him, I will leave. I will not make anyone follow you, but just give me a book of the book of security, that you are, if you have me in a point or another, you will not harm me. So the Prophet ﷺ made Abu Bakr write for him a book of security, that's what's called Kitab Aman, that this book stayed with Suraqa actually till the 8th year of after the Hijrah, with the opening of Mecca, or the Mecca conquest, when he was still disbeliever at that time. But he has this book that made the companion took this book to the Prophet, and the Prophet forgave him because of this book, the security book he wrote to him during the day of migration. And after that, the road became safe, alhamdulillah, and the Prophet with his companion Abu Bakr arrived in Rabi' al-Awwal in the first year of Hijrah. And at that time, it started the Hijrah calendar, as we mentioned, when he was spotted by the people in Quba. Quba is the beginning of Al-Madina. The first part before you go to the Medina is called Quba. They shouted the people there. All the Muslims were waiting for him, and they mentioned Allahu Akbar, and they have, of course, the nasheed that all of us know it. طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع. They start to sing this nasheed for celebrating the reception of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Every single one from the Ansar or the people of Al-Madinah was excited and wanted to earn the privilege of hosting the Prophet in their home. All of them were happy. All of them, they wished that day to see the Prophet alayhi salam. We stop here, and alhamdulillah, we finished the first major part of the seerah of the Prophet of the prophethood in Mecca. جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك الله بحمدك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.